Canada Remote Systems is Canada's largest bulletin board service. Since 1984, they have grown by 60% per year to the point where they now have over 6,000 members. We'll meet the man who started this organization in just a moment. Stay tuned for Careers. My name is Peter Wolfl. Welcome to Careers. Our guest today is Judd Newell. He is the founder of Canada Remote Systems. Welcome, Judd, to the show.
Hi, Peter. How are you tonight?
Oh, good, thanks. And yourself?
Good, thanks.
Let's start by talking a little bit about your company. What is Canada Remote Systems?
Well, Canada Remote Systems is a little hard to describe, Peter. We really get into three major areas. We're Canada's largest and oldest bulletin board. We also are the largest distributor of freeware, shareware, public domain type software. And because of our bulletin board connection, we're very powerful in the modem market. So all three sides integrate into Canada Remote Systems.
Mm-hmm. So you're not only providing a bulletin board service, but you're also selling software.
That's right.
And hardware as well.
That's correct.
Okay. And I believe you were mentioning in some of your literature that you're involved with some other services like disk conversions. What's a disk conversion?
Disk conversion is done when people move from one computer to another.
Mm-hmm.
For example, if somebody has an old Apple machine and they're moving into the MS-DOS world, they need to convert their data from one machine to another. We can do that type of conversion. Typically, most individuals can't do it, and their only alternative is to sit and retype in their recipes or their databases or whatever information they have.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very popular service.
So are you able to convert from, let's say, an Apple computer to an IBM type of computer?
We can go to and from about 500 different computers.
Okay, well, that's good to know.
It's a very strange service, but it becomes very useful to somebody that has to do the conversion.
Okay. Now, when you say that you're Canada's largest bulletin board service, how are you measuring that size?
Well, there are really two ways of measuring a bulletin board service. You can measure it in terms of number of lines, phone lines coming in. You can measure it in terms of online storage, or alternatively, you can measure it in terms of members. We believe that we are the largest bulletin board in Canada, both in terms of members and in terms of phone lines coming in. And we believe we're the second largest board in North America in those terms. In terms of storage, that's much harder to measure. There are other operations out there with storage capacity larger than ours, but we think the real measure is the number of members, and we tend to grow our membership at the rate of about 60% a year.
Okay. What do you think accounts for that large rate of growth?
Well, it really has to come down to service. A bulletin board, by its very nature, is a very competitive beast. Anybody can bring a bulletin board up, but you attract people by running a professional bulletin board. And we think that's where we've excelled over the years.
Okay. Before we go a lot further, what is a bulletin board exactly? A lot of our viewers may not really know what it is.
Well, a bulletin board is much like your supermarket bulletin board, where you go in and post messages looking for babysitters or whatever you need. We do it in an electronic basis, so people will call into us with their computer, post a message on our bulletin board, and other people will read that message and act upon it. That's where bulletin boards really started. But there is a second aspect to them that grew out of a need to share software, and that is as a repository for software. So boards like ours now have very large message bases, the supermarket type message base. But we also have thousands of programs that people can call in and take from us.
Now, you have, I guess, a very large selection of software on your bulletin board. How many programs would you have on there?
We're really not sure.
No?
Nobody has ever had the inclination to sit and count them. We would guess that we probably have some 60,000 programs online at any given time. And you can see why nobody wants to sit and
Right.
count them all.
Right, and you're continuously adding more as well.
Yes. We add about 1,000 programs every other week to our system.
Are you deleting some at the same time?
We try not to, but inevitably we run out of space and some of it has to go.
Right, right. Where do you obtain your software from?
We bring it
typically?
in. We bring it in from all over North America. We're the exclusive distributor of 3 very large organizations in the U.S., and of course much of our software comes from them.
And who are they?
PC-SIG, the world's largest distributor of freeware for the IBM type machine, Educorp, which is very popular in the Macintosh world, and PDE, Public Domain Exchange, which is very good in the Apple-DOS, the old Apple-DOS world. So much of our software comes in from those 3 organizations, but we also bring it in from other places like ourselves throughout North America. In fact, our long-distance bill typically runs about $1,000 a week bringing in software.
Now, you're a pretty young organization. How did you ever negotiate the exclusive rights to have such distributorships in Canada?
Well, most organizations like ourselves are young, so our counterparts in the States are in most cases newer than we are. As an organization, we go back to 1981, which is quite a long time for a bulletin board system to survive. Most bulletin boards will not last more than 3 to 6 months. We, of course, have surpassed that and continued to grow. In itself, that makes us unique, and it makes organizations in the States look to Canada Remote Systems.
Okay. Now, what's the historical background related to public domain software? Because I guess a lot of your business really is relating to public domain software.
It used to, Peter. Public domain software grew out of a need in the late 70s for people to exchange bits and pieces of programs. In the early days of microcomputing, you didn't have disk drives, you didn't have terminals. You literally had to sit in front of a computer and key in bit by bit your program. Relatively few people had the time to do that, so people started exchanging pieces of program. One person would write a subroutine to do something, and another person would write another subroutine. And because nobody could do it all, they did parts of it, put them together, and said, well, nobody's done it all, therefore it's free to everybody. And that's the concept of public domain software. It's a sharing effort. It's evolved over the years.
Sorry, wasn't it always usually the hackers that were involved in that kind of venture?
Well, hackers is a term that most of us don't like to use anymore because it has a connotation that isn't so good these days.
Right.
The computer literate were the ones that started it all.
Okay.
People that like playing with their computers is the best way of putting it.
Yeah.
But when the IBM brought out their PC in 1981, 82, that created a market for people. Prior to that, all computers were different. You didn't know what your friend down the street had. When IBM came out with their machine, all computers suddenly started to look alike. So programmers could develop software for a much broader target market, and they started to sell this product under the name freeware.
IBM basically set a standard, didn't they?
IBM certainly set a standard in the microcomputer world. There's no question about that. And that standard has allowed people to sell their product on a try-before-you-buy basis, and that's really where the market is now. 80% of the good stuff we have would be under the freeware, shareware type marketing tool. And that's great for somebody. That means you can take a program home, you can try it. If you like it, you'll send the author some money, and typically that'll be between $5 and $100. In return for that, he'll send you a manual and give you support, and it's very much like buying a popular package and having a straight return privilege on it.
Do a lot of people send in these registrations?
Depends very much on the program. A good author will expect to get 10 to 20% registrations. Bad ones will get nothing. But because you get to look at the program first,
right.
You
Especially
make
if it's a very easy program to use, then there's no real incentive to write in for the manual.
That's true. That's true.
You're
but
really relying on people's honesty.
to a great extent, but if it's a very easy program, the author will usually leave something out of the program itself. So you'll get a program with 80% of the capabilities, and he'll entice you to register to get the other 20%.
I see. That's
So
the
there's always a hook someplace.
Okay, now if I become a member of Canada Remote Systems, I'm able to download a lot of the software onto my own computer if I have a modem.
That's correct.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And I think you're advertising that you also support other types of computers, the Apple, and what else?
We support, I have to choose my words here, 7 types of computers now. It changes almost weekly. We started with the old CPM machines back in '81, moved to the IBM, and now we support the Macintosh, Apple, Commodore 64, and Amiga, and the Atari ST.
Great. Now, if you have an IBM PC, can you also download an Apple program onto your computer?
Sure. You can download it. The technical side is fairly easy, and in some cases it'll be very useful. IBM users with desktop publishing will often download Macintosh graphics or Atari graphics, and they can import them directly into the desktop publishing package.
Oh, great.
So that's quite common and quite popular.
And you might even, would you be able to download a whole Apple program and then transfer it onto your Apple computer, let's say if you have an Apple computer at work, even though it originates on an IBM computer?
Oh, sure. The machine that originates on really doesn't matter. Our systems are all run on IBM. But to the Atari user at the other end of the phone line, it doesn't matter to him. The program comes down and works on his machine.
Okay. So how did bulletin boards come about?
Well, bulletin boards arose as a means of sharing software. First bulletin board started out in Chicago in 1977 by a chap named Ward Christensen, and that board still runs today. Ward is also credited with inventing the protocols that we use to transfer software. It was a computer group that needed to transfer software, and they did it through an electronic medium. That's really where it all started and grew from there.
I see.
One of the needs for bulletin boards in the late 70s was because of all the different machines. That's largely eliminated nowadays, but in the early days, each machine had a different disk format, and you physically couldn't take an 8-inch disk and make it fit into a 5 1/4-inch disk drive. So that's really where it all started and why.
What originally got you interested in bulletin boards?
That's a difficult question. I've always been enamored of electronic things, and built my first computer and loaded it up and finally added a modem, which is the thing you need to transfer software over the phone lines, and spent 6 or 7 months calling every place in North America that had a bulletin board, and at that time there weren't very many, and finally decided, well, we'll bring one up ourselves. And took about 4 months to get it up and going, and brought it up in 1981. It was just more or less a natural outcropping of my desire to play with communications.
And this was originally a hobby?
This was very much a hobby.
Because you were working for a larger organization at the time.
That's right.
Okay. Now, where did you start it up? In your home?
Started it up in our home. We had a small townhouse out in Mississauga then, and we had the computer in a bedroom on the 2nd floor, which was very convenient, except when the phones rang at 3 in the morning. It becomes much less convenient when you've got a phone ringing all night. But that's where it started.
Okay. Well, we're going to take a break right now for a moment, but when we come back, we'll continue on with our interview with Judd Newell from Canada Remote Systems. Stay tuned. Hello, I'm Peter Wolfl. Welcome back to Careers. Our guest today is Judd Newell from Canada Remote Systems. Judd, when you started up your company in 1981, it was originally titled with a different name, was it not?
That's correct. We initially titled it Toronto RCPM, even though we were based in Mississauga. We thought Mississauga would be too constrained in terms of a name, so we picked Toronto. We quickly outgrew that when we moved away from the original CPM systems and also went Canada-wide and changed our name in 1984 to Canada Remote Systems.
Oh, okay. And was that basically so that you could appeal to the whole country?
It much better describes our operations. We're not a Toronto operation, although 50% of our membership would be local to us.
Mm-hmm.
The other 50% is long distance to us, so we're truly a national company.
What finally made you decide to go into this business yourself on a full-time basis?
Lack of time. Basically, it was a hobby that grew beyond what could be done as a hobby.
Mm-hmm.
In 1984, we had approximately 1,500 members, and we had promised them for a couple of years that, gee, it would be nice if you had a newsletter,
Mm-hmm.
but didn't have the time to do that. And in early '85, we simply made the decision that there was not enough time to devote to 2 jobs, and we took it full time.
You're a chartered management accountant by trade initially, right?
Right.
Did you find that background to be useful in starting up your own company?
It's been very useful in terms of dealing with organizations like banks.
Mm-hmm.
Having that background gives us an insight into financial controls and basically how you should run a company.
Mm-hmm. I guess you must have felt quite secure financially at the time before going into this business on a full-time basis.
Well, I don't think you ever feel secure financially when you're going into your own business, but because it had run as a hobby for 4 years, we had a fairly good idea
A good track
of where
record.
it could go.
Right. And I guess you probably had the confidence of the banks behind you.
Yes.
Okay. What kind of companies or customers of yours are making use of public domain software?
Well, our customer list now is over 33,000 people, and it goes from the federal government in Ottawa, and there are many branches, down to the person that's just buying his computer, or in many cases hasn't even bought his computer yet, and calls us to see what we have for the computer that he might buy. So we span virtually everybody.
Mm-hmm. Are you finding that there are some specific groups? The universities, or are they
The
colleges?
universities, the libraries both like the concept of public domain software because it's inexpensive for them.
Mm-hmm.
They can get a lot more software for their budget dollar. But we don't see any particular group. We see all groups being interested in this type of software.
Mm-hmm. I guess you're also appealing to customers outside of Toronto.
Yes, very much so.
So,
Our customer base is Canada-wide, but we also have a significant portion of our members in the States.
is that right?
Approximately 5% of our membership would be U.S. or international.
Mm-hmm. Can they access your bulletin board through the toll-free number?
No, they can't come to us through toll-free numbers. The Canadian user can come through us through the packet switch network, which is an offering of the phone companies. It allows them to access us for a reasonable rate per hour, but it's still not toll-free.
Mm-hmm.
The North American, the U.S. users and international users have to come on the regular dial-up long-distance lines, and that can be expensive.
Okay. How do you promote your company?
Really in 3 ways. Word of mouth, of course, is the most important part of our promotion.
Mm-hmm.
We've always found that our members will generate far more business for us than anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
One member tells a friend that tells another friend, and it's the chain letter effect.
Mm-hmm.
But we also do a great deal of advertising in magazines and at trade shows. And in those areas, we're trying to attract the people that haven't heard of Canada Remote Systems. That's effectively initial advertising.
Mm-hmm.
But the most significant promotion for us is our members.
Mm-hmm.
With 6,000 people out there talking about us, it's very nice.
That's right, yeah, as long as they're all satisfied with your service.
Most of them are.
Great. I guess your newsletter probably is a vehicle of promotion as well.
It is. It really doesn't go outside our membership, though, so it's promotion to a captive audience.
Mm-hmm.
And while it generates sales from the membership.
I think you have a copy of it here.
I have a copy of our mini catalog here.
Okay.
This is our prime promotion tool.
Maybe I'll hold that up.
That's a 40-page catalog that tries to outline all the things that people can get from Canada Remote Systems.
Mm-hmm.
40 pages doesn't do anywhere near enough justice to what we have, but it does bring people to us. We send about 300 of those out a week.
Wow. Okay. What kind of competition are you finding yourself up against? in this area?
Well, really two levels of competition. We're always faced with competition from the U.S. There are other organizations in the States that we're not tied into that are large and successful, and Canadians will go to them simply because they don't realize that Canada Remote is here. That's perhaps our most significant competition. The other competition is the single clubs, the clubs that have libraries, the single person that wants to go out and create his own library and resell it. That's competition as well. Less effective competition than the large groups in the States, but nonetheless it's there and we have to be aware of it.
Now, what basically makes your company better than that competition?
Service, pure and simple. You know, we've been in the business for a long time. Our product is always up to date.
Right. Don't you also have a technical hotline?
We have a technical hotline that's open 36 hours a week and it's free, which is very unusual. Basically, in a word, it has to be service that sets us apart.
Can people create their own little mini bulletin board as a hobby, let's say?
Sure, they can, and many do. In the Toronto area alone, we probably have 400 bulletin boards. The vast majority of them would be single-line hobbyist-type boards. It's not particularly difficult to do, and it can be a lot of fun.
In fact, isn't the software for that available from Canada Remote Systems?
Sure. Software is available from Canada Remote. It's available on other bulletin boards. It's readily available. There are really three popular packages in existence, and the user makes his choice from that.
So all you really have to do is be prepared to tie up your computer.
And your phone line.
And your phone line.
Which is often the biggest problem.
That's right. Judd, our cameraman Jim would like to know, what is a virus?
Oh, that's a very difficult question, but I'll try to answer it for Jim. A virus is a program that infects your computer. In the early days, they were known as Trojan horses. And what would happen is people would take a program, it would purport to do one thing, and it would do something totally different, like reformat a hard disk or wipe out the computer. The early ones were fairly easy to detect. They were unsophisticated and relatively straightforward. As programmers got smarter, they came up with a concept of viruses. A virus is a program that gets into your computer and reinfects other programs. So once it's in there, it can be almost impossible to get out without totally destroying everything on your computer.
Have you ever encountered such a beast?
We've encountered one in 7 years. 90% of the viruses that are reported to us turn out to be something that the user has done himself. He's erased a hard drive by mistake and blamed it on a program. They definitely exist, though. They have been caught in some very large organizations.
I think somebody must have a pretty sick mind to develop something like that.
There's no question about it. The only purpose of a virus is to destroy other people's work.
Right. What are Canada Remote Systems' plans for the future?
Well, we see expansion from our current 47 lines. In the next month, we'll be adding 6 more to go to 53. We see expansion over the next 2 years to about 100 lines. And that will be the practical limit in terms of our bulletin board. Beyond that, we will not be able to grow. We expect to continue in the public domain freeware world. The world is fast moving to higher storage things like this. This is a CD-ROM.
Okay.
Very much like what you would have in your home record player, except that it has computer software on it. There are 555 megabytes of software on there. The world is moving to larger capacity storage, and we expect to be in that market. We're also expanding into networking for small businesses, which is a natural outgrowth of our bulletin board side. So we don't plan to sit still.
Right. I guess that's a pretty efficient medium.
It's an extremely efficient medium. It's very, very popular with organizations that need to distribute large amounts of data. Lotus, for example, distributes stock market reports on it weekly. And if you have a portfolio that's large enough and the $10,000 a year to buy them from Lotus, it can be a very powerful tool. moving away from that technology, a step ahead is something called worms, which are write once, read many devices. They look very much like that CD-ROM, but you can actually put your own data on them. That's popular with accounting firms because they can write out the books of a corporation monthly and it's permanent. It can't possibly be destroyed.
Even though they can only write on it once.
They can write
But it would be for
on it.
archiving purposes.
That's right. And it holds 800 megabytes, so that the capacity is very, very large.
Now, are they also getting into the capability of showing pictures and sound on these floppy disks?
They are. One of the initial CD-ROMs that came out was to grow your encyclopedia, an entire encyclopedia on CD-ROM. It was strictly text, no pictures, no sound, nothing interesting. The new version that's just coming out will have both pictures and sound. So you will be able to get now the entire encyclopedia, and in some cases with narration of what's on there. So that technology is starting to move ahead at a very fast rate.
Okay.
There's some exciting things happening there.
That sounds fascinating. We're down to our last few seconds, Judd. I'd like to know, is there a phone number that people can reach you at if they'd like to find out more about Canada Remote Systems?
Yes, we can be reached at our main number, 231-2383.
Okay. Thank you, Judd, for joining us on Careers.
My pleasure.
For all of you out there, I would like you to know that we continuously try to improve the quality of this show, and we rely greatly upon your suggestions and your comments. So please write those comments to me. You can send them to me, Peter Wolfl, at care of Graham Cable TV, 35 Scarlett Road, Toronto, Ontario, M6N 4J8. I'm Peter Wolfl, and from all of us here at the studio, good luck in your own career.